And here's the thing. Now, we know that there was a divide in the room back in 2016 when we went to the ballot box to work out whether we wanted to remain or leave the EU. Some people didn't like the idea even of having the vote. Many more were simply a little unsure about what information they needed in order to cast their vote. So for me, what was most fascinating, still to this day, utterly fascinating, was watching the establishment squirm almost as working class people exercised their democratic right. Now, for years, the same politicians have been banging on about how we need to get more people involved in politics, how Westminster was removed from the masses, how MPs talked an almost different language to the average man in the street. Well, they were in for a shock. The proletariat went and let their voices be heard. After all, this was the same politicians, by the way, that invited this very scenario. And so it came to pass, of course, the United Kingdom left the EU. We can argue forever as to whether the question was right, whether we needed more details on both sides, whether there was mischief and venality on both sides, whether a referendum such as this should have been fought on a specified majority, like a 2/3 win or something of that order. But the point was, it was a democratic vote. So if it was unfair in some way, then it was equally unfair to both sides. Now, my biggest reservation, and I thought long and hard before I voted for the obvious, was not so much about the rights and wrongs of the EU, but it was about the monumental kind of industrial scale task of unpicking half a century's worth of laws, regulations and diktats. That process in itself I knew would be something that would take another decade before we were fully on track. It rattled around in my head like a viper in a sack. Is it worth it? Anyone who cares about democracy should have been having similar conversations. You can't make judgments this size without weighing up all the odds, even if some of those questions you have to ask yourself are a little uncomfortable, even if they challenge your instincts. Today, I'm still quite clear that I did the right thing, despite the rocky terrain ahead, but I'm interested in whether you regret your vote. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has clearly been something of a game changer. It might be temporary, but it's incredibly destructive. We all know this, but not just for us, of course, everywhere else too. Withdrawing our membership at a time of unprecedented turbulence and chaos in all areas of life, trade, employment, healthcare, education, etc., is not perhaps the most ideal setting to change a country's status. But that is where we're going, of course. And now you couple that with the news that we read today, 700,000 people are now looking for work off the company payroll, 750,000 people. We know this is just the start. It's not connected to Brexit, but it feeds into where we're at. Add to that the Northern Ireland issue, very much connected to Brexit. That's a situation that can absolutely never be solved to everyone's satisfaction. Fact, you can go around in circles forever, but you will never get the full thumbs up on this from all parties. And then we hear today about the scale of disruption predicted to hit UK borders post-Brexit. These are confidential government documents warning of queues in excess of 7,000 lorries in Kent. 2-day delays to get across the channel. Now, this might be what they call the reasonable worst-case scenario, but it's still a sobering thought that it could be like that for months. I don't, by the way, I'm an optimist. If you listen to this a lot, you'll be more than aware that I'm absolutely sure things are going to pan out just right. I can't give you the time frame on this. Imagine the country like this, though. The COVID lockdown, mass unemployment, Kent turned into a lorry park, and that has a knock-on effect right across the country. Do you therefore regret voting to leave the EU? 0344 499 1000. And I was only really seduced into asking this question after watching the shenanigans yesterday in the House of Commons. And as Mike rightly pointed out, you got 5 former prime ministers saying Boris Johnson is doing the wrong thing. We're going to talk to one very senior prominent backbencher shortly who thinks Boris Johnson is doing the wrong thing. And then I went on to our friend social media. I thought I'll have a little look and see what's going on there. What's the opinion out there? Forget the politicians, forget the Westminster Village. And I started spotting people saying, this is so much hassle. I wish I hadn't voted to leave. Not that people disagreed necessarily with their reasons for voting to leave, but almost fatigued. Got to the point, kind of developed a Stockholm syndrome with Barnier, to the point where you think, actually, you know what? I just can't be bothered with the battle anymore. It was 2016. Look what happened. June 2016. We thought by the end of the year, we'll be sailing on our tods. It'll be challenging. It'll be choppy. It'll be new, but we'll make it work. And then suddenly the likes of Gina Miller and co came along. The whole thing, rightly or wrongly, up in the air it goes. And for the last 4 years, the ferrets in the sack have been fighting away like good ones. And it continues to this day. So what I've spotted are a lot of people kind of got a sort of Brexit fatigue. I'm spotting people saying, I voted for this, but now I'm not sure I can be bothered with the rest of this journey. And this is just the beginning of the process of getting out. We haven't got on to the minutiae and the detail and all the rest of it. So I'm throwing this out there really as much because I would love to be told by many people, do you know what? It's not changed my mind at all on the way I voted. Not changed my mind a tiny bit. I'm keeping with my colours and that's it. But I'm going to throw this out there anyway and ask that question. Do you regret voting Brexit? Do you now wish you'd either abstained or even, if this is your position, voted the other way? Has all of the hassle, the ongoing debates, the shenanigans in Parliament, the hurdles that are in the way, the might of the EU, the Northern Ireland question, and all of this has come against a backdrop of COVID, which as far as I can see, ain't going away anytime in the next 12 months, not in its full entirety. The worst possible scenario to be debating anything. And this is quite a depressing thought in that respect. Again, my own caveat, I'm forever the optimist. Everything's going to be cool. It's all going to be great. Might take a little while. We've got to circumnavigate this, but I can see why some people have kind of got their pants in a twist on this one and just feel that it's the only word I can think of, fatigued. Just that sense of, I wish I hadn't voted this way. Either because you might have stumbled on new information that has fundamentally changed your thinking, but perhaps it's just that you're worn out. Yeah, they won. They won because they wore us out. And of course, a lot of us said at the beginning, that's part of the game, to wear you the heck out. That's the whole idea. Get you on your knees crying for this thing to be finished. And we'll just prolong it a little longer and a little longer and a little bit longer too. We'll just keep that going. Keep tweaking it. Oh, there's an amendment here that's wrong. There's a clause there that will never work. Back to the drawing board. Send Mr. Frost over. Get Boris going angry in the House of Commons. Remove Ed Miliband from the crypt. Bring him back up to wheel out a speech. All of that. Has it got you? Has any of this got you? Genuine question. And if you're going to tell me you're absolutely, I'm sure there are some people who are going to dig their heels in even more on this. But there's bound to be others that are thinking, yeah, you know what? I'm wavering. Is that you? Do you actually regret now voting to leave the EU?